This is the story of Heracles. Not Hercules. We're using the Greek version here. Hercules doesn't even make any sense in the story. I mean, Heracles was named after Hera. The Romans renamed her Juno. Where the hell did they get Hercules from? But anyways, this is the story of Heracles. Or, more specifically, the 12 labors of Heracles. Born of Zeus and not his wife Hera, but a mortal queen named Alcmene. Zeus disguised himself as Alcmene's husband Amphitryon as he was away at battle. So the two get it on, and Zeus eventually leaves, and when Amphitryon comes home the next day, boy was Alcmene surprised. Not so surprised that she didn't bang her husband too, because guess what? Heracles actually has a half-twin. But we're never going to mention him again, alright? This is Heracles' story. Of course, Hera found out about Zeus's infidelity once again and became enraged. And, instead of punishing Zeus as usual, she targets little Heracles and vows to make his life miserable. When Heracles was finally born, Hera sent 2 snakes to crawl into his crib and kill him, but Heracles, with his godlike strength, strangled the 2 snakes to death. Some versions of the story explain that Alcmene abandoned him in fear of Hera's wrath. One thing leading to another, Athena finds him and gives him to Hera, who somehow doesn't recognize the baby she just tried to kill, and breastfeeds Heracles a little bit out of pity, but he's too strong, and well, Hera stops breastfeeding him and yeets him back to Alcmene. This is how Heracles got his name, Glory of Hera. At this point, Hera just kind of gives up and says, yeah, alright, I think I'll come back to this in a little bit. I'll give him a few years. Heracles eventually grows up and has a wife and a few kids and does pretty well for himself. Then Hera remembers, oh yeah, I'm still pissed off at this guy. So she sends down a little bit of madness into his brain and, well, he kind of brutally murders his wife and kids. When the curse wore off and he finally came to, of course he was a little distraught to say the least, and he sought out the Oracle of Delphi to tell him what to do to be forgiven. She told him that he must go into servitude under his cousin King Eurystheus. Eurystheus, influenced by Hera, assigned 10 seemingly impossible labors to Heracles as penitence for his crime. I know I said 12 earlier, but we'll get to that. First he was to kill the lion of Nemea, which was said to be impossible to kill with weapons. So, naturally, Heracles, being the demigod that he is, well, just strangled it to death. That was easy. He then used the lion's own claws to skin it and keep its hide as a cloak. Upon returning to his cousin, Heracles managed to scare the cowardly Eurystheus with the pelt. Next, Heracles was sent to kill the Hydra of Lerna, a dragon-like creature with multiple heads. For this labor, Heracles brought his nephew, Iolaus, to assist him. Every time Heracles cut off one of the heads, 2 grew back in its place. Iolaus suggested that they use fire to sear their wounds immediately after the heads were cut off. This prevented the heads from growing back and the Hydra was quickly defeated. Heracles then dipped his arrowheads in the poisonous Hydra blood, just for good measure, just in case the arrows don't kill whatever he's shooting at. Some versions of the story mention that Hera sent a crab to pinch Hercules' feet to protect the Hydra, of course leading Heracles to crush the crab. But this is how the constellation of Cancer was created, so yeah, there's that. After that, Heracles was sent to capture the stag of Cyrenia. This golden-horned stag was favored by Artemis, the huntress goddess, but she allowed Heracles to take the stag as long as he promised to return it to her afterwards. Eurystheus wanted to keep the stag, but as soon as Heracles put it down, the stag ran away and returned to Artemis. Heracles kept his promise to Eurystheus, though, and technically completed his 3rd labor, so he was on to the next one. The 4th labor was to capture the Erymanthian boar. A wise old centaur advised Heracles to chase the boar into thick snow where it would get caught and be easily bound. Also, this very centaur became the constellation Sagittarius after he died. Lots of zodiacs in this story, I know. For his 5th task, Heracles was sent to clean the stables of Augeas, which were filthy from the king's countless cattle. This, too, proved to be an easy task for Heracles, but, just for added fun, Heracles bet the king that if he could clean the stables in one day, he would be allowed to take a 10th of the cattle, to which the king agreed. A river flowed nearby, and Heracles got the idea to just simply dam up the river so all the water would flow through the stables. Not only did this clean the stables, but it also somehow didn't destroy the building. The next labor was to drive away the Stymphalian birds, huge birds that would terrorize the people who lived nearby. With the help of the goddess Athena, Heracles used a special instrument to scare the birds into the sky, which allowed him to shoot them down with his arrows. was to stop the raging of the mad Cretan bull, given to King Minos by Poseidon. Once again, this proved an easy task for Heracles, who seized it from behind and bound it. The eighth labor was to capture Diomedes' horses, which he had fed human flesh to. Lovely! Disgusted by his actions, Heracles wrestled the mad king and fed him to his own monstrous horses. Sated, the horses were then easily led away. The ninth task proved to be the most difficult at this point. Heracles was to obtain the girdle of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. He was expecting a fight, but when he landed on the island, the queen was generous enough to give her girdle freely. Unfortunately, Hera was up to her shenanigans again and started a rumor amongst the Amazons that Heracles was planning on taking their queen, so they gathered and charged him. Heracles, believing that Hippolyta initiated the conflict, killed her without hesitation and managed to escape the island of women. The 10th and final labor was to capture the red cattle of the giant Geryon, who had 3 heads and 3 bodies. On his way there, Heracles got bored and annoyed at the sun, so he shot an arrow at it, which managed to get quite close. Helios, the sun god, was impressed by Heracles' strength and lent him his chariot for the final task. Heracles managed to fight off the giant's herdsman and 2-headed dog before killing the giant himself. Once Heracles reached Eurystheus once again, the Piggy King declared that 2 of Heracles' labors wouldn't count. The Hydra, since he received help from Iolaus, and Augeas' stables, since he received a payment of cattle for the labor. Eurystheus thus assigned 2 more labors for our hero to undertake, making the labor count to 12. The 11th task was very tricky for Heracles. He was to collect the golden apples of the Hesperides in a garden of an unknown location. Heracles set off to find the Titan Atlas, who held up the sky with his hands. Heracles asked him to retrieve the apples for him if he would take his place holding the heavens, to which the Titan agreed. Once Atlas returned with the apples, however, he realized he did not want to be stuck holding the sky again. But, with Heracles' clever thinking, he tricked the Titan into switching places with him once again and ran off with the apples in hand. Heracles was tasked with capturing and retrieving Cerberus, the 3-headed dog of Hades. The Lord of the Underworld agreed to let Heracles have Cerberus, but only if he did not use any weapons. Once again, Heracles utilized his massive strength to chokehold the hound by all 3 heads, causing him to submit and allow Heracles to carry him back to Eurystheus. Understandably terrified by the beast, the cowardly king ordered Heracles to return the dog to the underworld. This was the 12th and final labor. Heracles had completed his years of servitude, and was once again purified and freed, able to relish in his heroic glory. At least until his honestly hilarious death, but that's another story.